next we got Nkobe Dean. Um, and I'll go first on this one. The
Okay.
linebacker from Georgia. Um, I like him. Don't love him necessarily. I'm not saying that I wouldn't draft him.
Yeah.
But I think Devin Lloyd is my clear cut linebacker one. Because these guys are
Okay.
the two, top two linebackers in this draft as of now.
Yeah.
For media perspective and draft boards and all that. But Nkobe Dean to me, Devin Lloyd. Okay, here's my thing with Devin Lloyd. I just think he's more versatile. He's bigger. He's stronger. Um, he fits a lot more schemes better. I just think he's a little bit better player. Nkobe Dean for me though, his pros are he's fast. He's solid in coverage. He's got good quick feet. Not many false steps. He's a solid blitzer as well because being a smaller guy at 6 foot 225, he is a bit faster than most linebackers. So he's very good at shooting those gaps and getting past those O linemen before they're even out of their stance, which is really nice. Because he's a guy that maybe you could even use on the edge in certain instances if he can work on his handwork a little bit. And then he's surprisingly good at fighting off blocks for his size. It was something I was like
Yeah.
looking for was for him to get pushed around, and he doesn't really get pushed around too much. I mean, he's a guy that kind of he makes himself known for being a smaller guy. He's very strong, and he doesn't back down at all, no
Hmm.
matter who it is. I've seen him, fight through guards, fight through centers, somewhat double teams with tight ends and left tackles or whatever. And I've seen him do it. So that's really nice for him for being a smaller guy. He's very versatile. He even plays some safety and some slot over in Georgia, believe it or not. He's a guy that they drop back. And he even played, I guess you could call it outside corner, but it was more of like a free safety position. But he played a decent amount of slot as well. So his coverage is actually pretty good. I don't know. Well, I really don't think that he'll do that in the NFL. I think that was just because Georgia wanted to use him as much as possible. He's just going to be a linebacker in the NFL for sure. Maybe a little bit of slot stuff depending on who's in the slot. But he's definitely a linebacker in the NFL. Solid read and react. He's got good closing speed, good hands, very good burst and acceleration, can rush the passer, drop deep, cover flats, cover man to man. And then cons for me. Smaller build. He's a bit of a tweener. I'd want him to add probably 10 pounds, 5-10 pounds, just because if you're going to be fighting through uh, them big guys, you need to add a little bit of weight to not get pushed around, which, like I said, he does a good enough job of that right now. So maybe he doesn't necessarily need to. But for these guys, usually you want them to add weight coming into the NFL, no matter who they are, unless they're one of those
Yeah.
really fast, like I rely on speed. Then you're like, okay, we'll leave you at your weight. But usually NFL teams ask them to add 5-10 pounds normally. Um, and then he shoots the incorrect gaps a lot. I feel like a little too often for me. It seems like he's kind of guessing sometimes, and it could be the play call he's just told to shoot to blitz that A gap. But it doesn't look like a blitz necessarily. A lot of the times it looks like he's guessing to try to see where the run's going, and he just guesses the wrong gap. He gets caught too deep in the backfield. Sometimes he over pursues. I'd like to see him be a little bit more active, kind of like the Kyle Hamilton stuff. He's not in the play as much as you'd like for a 6 foot 225 linebacker that runs a 4.5 or 4.6. Just not all over the field like you'd want. Needs to tackle a lot better. Personally, this was his biggest downfall for me was his tackling. He does not have good angles. He has a lot of issues wrapping up. He can just get kind of ran over at times. And it's by guys that aren't very big, like wide receivers will kind of he arm tackles way too much for me as a linebacker. Um, Stands up too high a lot of the times. And like I said before, he could add some weight. Um, and my comp for him is Jayon Brown. I'm going to get that out of the way first because Nkobe
Okay.
Dean was it was a hard comp for me just because there's not too many 6 foot 225 linebackers in the NFL that play the way he does. Um, and Jayon Brown for me was the closest thing I could find where he's good in coverage. He's good against the run. And I think Jayon Brown is about what Nkobe Dean could be at his best, in my opinion. I think at his worst, he'll be like a decent second linebacker, a pretty good, second linebacker. but I still give him a B or B plus grade. So he's kind of in that Chris Olave talent pool, in my opinion. I think he's still a first round pick. But I think Devin Lloyd's a top 15 pick where I would probably wait to take Nkobe Dean bottom 20. Like if he's there at 32, I would probably take him. But
interesting.
Yeah.
So like Nkobe Dean is a guy that I think would be targeted high if he came out 10 years ago. I think he's your traditional linebacker. Right now, it seems like downfall has moved in such a way where you want your linebackers to be former safeties who can cover very well. And so, like, we love our linebacker safety hybrids. I feel like all of those guys that, like, we talked about, like Tyler Hampton, a Duggar, like a Jamie Collins, those guys have always been like able to cover well and get up to the line and play linebacker and safety. It intrigues me that Nkobe Dean has played safety in some stuff, some corner, some slot corner in college, but to me, I don't really know if he has that range or cover skills as a Devin Lloyd does. Nor does he have the height or the distance, height or weight to do it day in, day out. And so I really like his lateral quickness. I think that he can get from end to end, like end to end really well. And so that like intrigues me. And one of the things that he does super well that's not necessarily shown on a football field is he has like maybe the best leadership skills I've seen from any college football player that I've scouted this year. It seems like the Georgia defense, which is super talented, really relied on the Kobe Dean to push them where they need to go. And I think that without Nkobe Dean, leadership skills, they probably don't beat Alabama.
Right. I mean, and so, that's a big thing to say. So I feel like that could even bring them up your draft board just because of that too.
Right. And so with that being said, I think that he's going to slide because of his height. 6 foot is not necessarily what you want to see in a NFL linebacker. And to me, he's more 5'10", 5'11" than 6 foot. But like he does have like that lateral quickness, the things that you liked of like DJ Williams back in the day, or like a Ty Bruschi, or right now, I think the perfect fit for him is Patrick Queen from Baltimore. That's the guy that I would comp him. Patrick Queen isn't your prototypical linebacker that you want nowadays, where he can cover, he can play safeties, just like that old school middle linebacker that does a lot of like the smart plays that you ask of him to do. And so to me, just because of position flexibility, I would put Devin Lloyd ahead of him, but I also won't be shocked if Nkobe Dean ends up going in front just because of that leadership aspect.
Right.
To me, both of them are probably late first round picks. Nkobe Dean could slip into the second. And I that's kind of all I got.
So honestly, I'm gonna be real. I think I disagree completely. I think it's the opposite in my opinion. I think Nkobe Dean is a little bit more versatile. He's a little bit better in coverage than a Devin Lloyd. I think Devin Lloyd looks better in zone because he's got a bigger body, so he has more, he can take up more space and kind of be in the right spot still. But the difference for me is I think Devin Lloyd needs a little bit more work on his feet in zone coverage and his back pedal and stuff like that. Not a bunch. Like I don't think he's a bad cover guy. But I think Nkobe Dean is a lot better man to man for sure. Just mostly because of the speed difference. Because I mean, it is 2/10 of a second speed difference, 40 time wise. But I don't know. I feel like he's more versatile because he can play that slot corner. He can rush the passer. He can play your normal, 3 down linebacker. Devin Lloyd can play 3 down linebacker and rush the passer, but I don't think I put him in the slot at all in any way, unless I mean Rhett Ellison is in the slot, because he's going to get burnt. He's not very fast, but he's very smart. And that's another thing. I feel like Devin Lloyd's better to me because he's just better as a player. He's way better tackler. And that's really the biggest thing for me with Nkobe Dean is he's not a good tackler. Like, I don't know what it is about that. I don't know if it's Georgia's coaching staff or if he just doesn't give enough effort, but his tackling, he honestly reminds me of Jared Davis. Like if he was
Yeah.
even the leadership stuff, because if he was, I think Jared Davis is 6'3", like 230. If he was a bigger guy, I think I would have used Jared Davis because it's almost the exact same thing. It's kind of wild. He's a great leader, played in the SEC. He's, faster, but he kind of just throws his body around. He goes in the wrong gaps a lot. He's not the difference is I think Nkobe Dean's way better in coverage, but that has to do with the size difference, I think, too.
It's interesting that you say that because, as you know, in the chat that we have, the football chat that we have, I've been a huge Devin Lloyd fan. And one of the big reasons why I'm a Devin Lloyd fan is because of all the highlights I've seen, all of the things I've read. The biggest player comp that I've seen is Jamie Collins and Kyle Van Noy. And a lot of the things that the writers and the video editors have said about Devin Lloyd is that he is a good cover guy and he is going to be that young Jamie Collins type that the Patriots desperately like in their linebackers. Plus, he kind of fits that size and weight that the Patriots like to cover in the draft. And so, like, to me, and honestly, I really haven't seen much tape on Nkobe Dean. But like to me, everything that I read about Lloyd and all that stuff is that he does have that coverage skills that
Right.
The Patriots covet in that will linebacker spot.
Yeah.
So it's interesting that you see opposite.
I don't think he's bad in coverage. I just think Nkobe's a little better. Like I think he's
for
great.
Sure.
Like he's pretty good. You know what I mean? He just has a couple things, specifically man coverage, he needs to work on. But you're really not going to ask him to cover, a wide receiver man to man ever. So it's not like you're going to be too worried about that. There will be times he'll have to cover tight ends man to man, but depending on who it is, it's really the speed thing that I'm more worried about. And his feet, because if you're already speed deficient and you have feet, footwork issues in your coverage, you're screwed because you're not going to have the speed to catch up after you make the mistake with your feet. And then you're not going to have the good footwork to make up for the speed difference. So that's really my issue with Devin Lloyd. And like I said before, my comp for Devin Lloyd is Demario Davis, and he's one of the best linebackers in the league. And I think that's what Devin Lloyd could be because he's just that versatile and that good. And like I said before, the biggest difference with Devin Lloyd is I think he's more of your, prototypical linebacker because he goes on the field, he hits hard, he tackles up or he wraps up well, he tackles well, he's in the gaps, the right gaps, he's very smart. And the difference is I think Nkobe Dean's just super athletic and kind of just flies around, and tries to make plays. I never thought about it, but Jared Davis, I feel like is a great comp for him. Just in terms of his possible career trajectory.
Gotcha. Yeah, I can't wait until I see more film from Lloyd and Dean.